Hello and welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, ask a friend to choose a Doctor Who story and I have to watch it, commentate along and guess what their favourite things about each instalment might be.
Hello, my name is Ashley Frieze and I'm a stand-up comedian, in fact, musical stand-up comedian, the worst sort of comedian, hence the guitars over my shoulder. And of course, I am a Doctor Who fan. I've nominated for today's show, I've nominated the episode Let's Kill Hitler, which has a brilliant clickbaity title and was very exciting when it came up on the next time trailer for the episode before, A Good Man Goes to War. And I picked this one because I was looking at a TikTok or something, and a little clip from this came up, and I thought, you know what, I want to see that again. It's a great measure of an episode if you want to see it again. And in particular, I remembered it having a kind of the same sort of feel as the film Top Secret, which, if you remember, is a comedy set in the Second World War. And the two seem to have the same sort of flavour to them, very light-hearted, yet set in that time. Of course, because this is Toby's podcast that I'm contributing to, I had to immediately work out what the Doctor Who link is between the film Top Secret and Doctor Who. Which actors have been in both. That's his game, but it's my turn to have a go. So I thought maybe Warren Clarke might have done it both, but he hasn't, but probably should have done. Ian McNeice, he managed to make it into both Top Secret and Doctor Who, playing Winston Churchill, of course, in Victory of the Daleks. But I mean, there's a glaring, obvious link between the world of Top Secret and Doctor Who in the form of Peter Cushing, who may not necessarily be canon Doctor Who, but certainly, well, play the Doctor. I think that's a decent link. These two are obviously in the same universe. That's what I'm saying. So onwards, let's talk about the things that I spotted in this episode when I had a little rewatch of it a few minutes ago.
Ah, the lovely Ashley Frieze there. Good Lord, I haven't seen Ashley in the flesh for many years, probably prior to COVID. A reminder that we should all touch base perhaps more than we do. And Ashley, I always knew he was a bit of a fan. And I remember him, he's a musician, Ashley, a brilliant musician, and he shouldn't apologise for being a musical comedian. But you may not know this, lovely listener, but there's a certain frisson of disapproval that ripples around certain types of comedian when it is announced that there is a musical comedian on the bill. I think, to me, the rules are very simple. If you are a person with a microphone and you make an audience laugh, so long as you are not stealing material from another comedian, you're doing your job, and you do it however you wish and with whatever weapons are in your arsenal. And if one of the weapons you have is to have musical talent and you can use that to bend songs to your will or write original songs or just add various bits of musical skullduggery to your act, then you are entitled so to do. I mean, I get slightly jealous of an act who goes on wielding a guitar, but that's because I can't play a guitar. And it is maybe a bit of a shorthand, but an accent can sometimes be a shorthand. We all have other different things that we use, but that's why Ashley said he was one of the sort of more hated kinds of comedians. But that's comedy's fault, not Ashley. But it's very self-deprecating of him to mention it. But I always knew he was a bit of a geek. He did a wonderful song about Star Wars back in the day, and about, I can't remember the entire context, but it's about self-pleasuring to Star Wars, and obviously ends with turning Han Solo into Hand Solo, which has always stuck in my mind. And gosh, I remember him doing that several venues ago from my comedy club, XS Malarkey. Just thinking actually about all the venues we've had, because actually, as I record this, last night we had some people in, Sally and Yvonne, who used to come every week in that venue that I'm just referring to. And that was 24 years ago whilst they were at university, and now they're proper grown-ups who've lived lives, and I'm still essentially, although we've changed venues, I'm still in the same place. But anyway, that was lovely to see them, and I've seen them probably less recently than I've seen Ashley, and I haven't seen Ashley for a while. So very nice of Ashley to choose Let's Kill Hitler, which is not an episode I especially go back to. I watched it at the time. I've watched it a few times, probably a handful of times, only a small handful of times. I've always remembered it as being a sort of not a story so much as a sort of series of incidents to tie up certain things. And I remember feeling like it wasn't an adventure so much as a sort of series of bits and bobs. I don't know why that is. Why do I have that impression? Because I know that Mel's comes in, but that spoilers everybody that she is River Song, and that Hitler does not play as much of a part as the pre-publicity had led us to believe. And of course, it introduces the Tesselector. So it's doing some season arc work, and it is, of course, the first episode back after the break that had been preceded by A Good Man Goes to War, which was all big action adventure excitement. And I recall it being sort of Moffat-y and funny, and sort of mosaic, perhaps, rather than a story with a beginning and a middle and an end. But I may be wrong on that. Let's see. But before we do, I have to just go on the back of what Ashley said about the film Top Secret. No, Warren Clark was not in Doctor Who, and he did mention. I mean, he skimmed the surface of Top Secret, which is a favourite of mine. It's if you don't know Top Secret, it's basically Airplane. The people who made Airplane do World War II, and it stars Val Kilmer, and is very funny. And he's right, it does have our own wartime hero, Ian McNeice, aka Winston Churchill, but it has many Doctor Who actors. And I'm not looking this up, guys. I'm just going to do this because this is what my misspent youth was. I remember being delighted because it features Richard Mays, a big bearded actor, sometimes wore a monocle in things. He was that sort of actor. Often played Russians because he had that sort of bearing. But he was one of the last pieces I put together in my Fury from the Deep jigsaw, which was the first story I knew all of the cast from, and then was delighted when I saw them all because, he assumed everything in black and white, everyone would be dead or would have stopped working. And of course, if I knew then what I knew now, you'd realise actually most people are still around, and that 20 years isn't so long ago, guys. But when I was a teenager 20 years ago seemed forever. And now, of course, the new series of Doctor Who is nearly 20 years old. So Richard Mays from Fury from the Deep has quite a nice part in Top Secret, as does, of course, because it's set during World War II and needs people to do Germans. It has Gerten Klauber from the Romans and the Macra Terror, often played Germans, never did in Doctor Who, though. It also has... it's got Peter Cushing in it, of course, and in a weird backwards scene, and Michael Gough. And the sort of handsome anti-hero guy is played by Christopher Villiers, who is in The King's Demons and later in Mummy on the Orient Express. So I take your Top Secret actors that you mentioned there, Ashley, and I raise you, and there are probably some more as well. As I say, I've not looked any up. I was gonna. I knew because it's when I got distracted, mentioning that it's the Airplane people doing World War II. It does have one of my favourite comedy lines ever, and it is delivered by a Doctor Who actor, and that is when the Germans are searching the potato farm which is housing the French resistance. They knock on the door, and the thing slides in the door, and a man's face appears, the farmer's face appears, and they go, is this the potato farm? And he goes, yes, I am Mr. Potato, or Monsieur Potato. But I think that's a lovely joke that it's called the potato farm because he's called Mr. Potato, not that it's a farm for potatoes. I love that. And Mr. Farmer Potato is played by Sidney Arnold, who is Perkins in The Highlanders, because of course, this is the 80s. All those actors from the 60s were still about. I just probably just assumed they weren't. I could have probably written to everybody from Doctor Who, bar about half a dozen people, but there we are. I could only afford 2 stamps a week, and they were judiciously chosen who they went to. Anyway, I can't have regrets, especially not on a podcast that's about a totally different era of the show's history. I could easily write to everybody from Let's Kill Hitler, but I think my writing to actors' days are over, and I will leave that to other people and just hope that I come across the actors in professional circumstances. And indeed I have some of the cast of this, and I'm sure I will discuss that as we go on. But yes, let's get ready to kill Hitler, an audacious title. As I say, I'm not overly familiar with anything from this point in the show onwards, really. Certainly not as much as I am the classic series. So let's see how we do. I have to choose 5 things that Ashley will also have done. He will have chosen his 5 things, and the rules are if I choose 3 or more that are the same as his, I win. But I've only won this 3 times, haven't I? So with Love and Monsters, Christmas Carol, and The Sensorites. So that means my new series' average is better. But with these new episodes, as I say, newer episodes. I mean, it's not that new, is it? This was from 2011. This is so. In fact, when Top Secret was out. When was Top Secret out? Oh gosh. I don't know, but shall I guess? I'll guess about 1988. No, earlier than 8. No, because it was before 86, 85, 86, something like that, when it was out. So Fury from the Deep was oh well, actually no, it was longer ago. 86. So it was nearly 20 years, whereas yeah, Let's Kill Hitler is only, as I record this, 13 years away. So anyway, I've got very distracted talking about things that are entirely nothing to do with this, but it just goes to show how the various Doctor Who connections can take us to different places. I have it up on my iPlayer. I have paused the very first frame, which is the previously on showing one of those remarkable silence creatures, which I think are a great Doctor Who-y visual. So I'm going to go to full screen on my iPlayer, and I would urge you to do the same, or to break out your DVD, or do whatever it is you want to do, though most people don't watch along, and you may be going for a walk, or you may be driving, or you may be just trying to put up that shelf or dig that bit of the garden, in which case I shall try to conjure the visuals for you, or at least take you back in time to when you first watched this, and let's see what happens when the TARDIS team decide to let's kill Hitler. That didn't quite fit as well as I'd hoped, because decide to let's kill Hitler doesn't work, does it? Anyway, you can tell it's live. This is the previously on. And it's quite detailed, isn't it? I remember I really like Good Man Goes to War. It does feel like a real climax, even though it's sort of mid-season. My main objection to what happened this series was that, it starts with, this is most definitely the Doctor, he is most definitely dead, and what that actually meant was it's not definitely the Doctor, and he's not definitely dead, and all we had to go on that this was most definitely the Doctor and he is most definitely dead is that the programme was telling us that. So we weren't fooled by it being a lie, because we were told a lie. And I do think you have to, if you say, and I would argue the same with this season as well, with Ruby Sunday being a total mystery and her mum being very important, and then it going, well, yeah, what made you think that? Well, you did, because you told us. But anyway, it shows the peril of the modern way of Doctor Who, where, you set up mysteries or hooks or arcs, and they have to pay off. And actually, the ones that have paid off most successfully for me have been the sort of meaningless ones, Bad Wolf. Saxon was pretty good. That just sort of dripped thing saying, this character is important. But I think the minute you get more complicated than that, and we had this, that's a beautiful shot, that's an excellent shot, and anything that invokes crop circles, I think is, that's a witty invocation of a thing that we associate with extraterrestrials. Crop circles, of course, are a bit sort of X-Filey as well, sort of saying, this is all of this, conspiracy stuff or things that are the modern day mysteries will weave into the landscape of our program. It does make you feel a little sort of more relevant. And then Doctor Who makes it charming by having a mustard-coloured Minnie doing the circles, and I think that's rather fun. And the addition of the line is a witty joke. That's hang on, we haven't got that, and it's beautifully filmed. This Richard Senior is not a director that does a lot of Doctor Who. Does he do any other than this? I don't think he does any other than this, does he? And that's a great opening and a wonderful entrance for the splendid Nina Toussaint-White. Who I think is great fun as Mel's. I seem to recall her being great fun as Mel's. And I have to say, even though she's called Mel's, I did not put two and two together and go, oh, it's Melody Pond, even though Melody Pond has been said a lot. So that was so maybe I'm stupid, but that was a good misdirect. She's quite fun, and this is a nice mystery. She blows in. She's got such presence. She's very funky. She's got a lot of sparkle. She's a great actress, Nina, and she's quite a sort of Moffat-y woman, isn't she? She's cool. She's sarky. She's got a gun. But I don't mind all of that. I'll tell you what this reminds me of. It reminds me a bit of Quentin Tarantino. And Quentin Tarantino is a sort of guilty pleasure of mine. And I know, if we look at, if we look beneath the surface of some of the ways that he does sort of representation or the way that he mines stuff, I know people have difficulty sometimes with some of that. But on a purely, filmic sort of, geeks inheriting the earth, and skill. I am a great enjoyer of the work of Quentin Tarantino, and find his films to be, sort of great fun and a bit naughty and a bit, with some really great dialogue and good parts for actors, and this reminds me a bit of that in the sort of, the fast talking, quippy, sort of glorified criminal type, but I remember when I watched this the first time round, you have this great mystery of, you go, well, where has this person come from? It's obviously not going to be straightforward. They're obviously not going to go, well, this is just somebody we haven't mentioned before. There's obviously a reason we don't know who this is. I think the poor old Rory being, I think we tend to I tend to identify with Rory, even though I've never actually had a relationship like that where I was with two women who humiliated me. But I think spiritually, I think I'm Rory, perhaps, sort of slightly hapless and underappreciated, but with a good heart and a desire to do my best. But this is a great sort of mystery to set up. And poor old Rory. Oh, poor old Rory. And how do we feel about is that because it turns into a great love affair, and in the end they love each other and they leave the show together. So that's all right. I think I think Moffat is for all the horrible stuff that Rory goes through, he does prosper in the end with his love. And I think we've all known what it feels like to not feel like we can we can get the object of our affection. But anyway, yeah, I mean, a lot of Stephen Moffat's episodes have, very short scenes, whether it's sort of flashbacks or whether it's funny little comical episodes of the Doctor that just take one scene and then he's gone and then we're somewhere else. And this is a bit like that with this fast cutting presence of Mel's, the hitherto unmentioned Mel's. That's nice. That's a nice piece of direction, that the TARDIS model going into the actual TARDIS. So yeah, Nina. Why do I call her Nina? It's a bit cheeky of me, really, because I only spent a day with her. She was in New Earth, a Big Finish Adventures from New Earth that I was in, and she came in, and that day Julian Rhind-Tutt came in. It was a good old dressing room, that. And she was very down to earth and very lovely, which and she's had, she's done some great work. I mean, since then she did a thing on a housing estate that was about a sort of gang that were intimidating her into not giving evidence, I think, and it was a rare modern drama that was actually, I thought, without being a horror, there was no supernatural element at all, actually genuinely scary, and it was lovely seeing her play the lead. And she was also a likable detective in The Bodyguard, which is a series that did really, really well over here. So glad to see that she's been she's been holding her own, because she's a good actress. I think she's a really attractive presence on screen. I think she's got a real energy about her that I really like. And here we are. It's interesting, isn't it, that setting a sort of caper adventure in Nazi Germany, and we tend to be very serious about this stuff these days, because obviously World War II was about more than the warlike larks and heroics we get from war movies, the Holocaust and the terrible things that happened during World War II, but we've always, I think, as a species, invoked terrible events and dramatised them, and I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. And indeed, a lot of the war films of the time, showed them as you would think people would have wanted to forget, but instead, actually, war films during the war were there to stir up patriotic fervour, but actually after the war, a lot of them showed a sort of great sort of zeal for the adventuring element of them, rather than a distaste, which is interesting. We've always dramatised things to make us in touch with and aware of our history and of past events. And you don't have to be accurate if you don't want to be, I don't think. I think it's all part of the patchwork that makes up our modern day. And so I think it's fine, I think it's fine for Doctor Who, as indeed, this reminds me of Inglourious Bastards, the Quentin Tarantino film, which plays fast and loose with World War II, but to quite entertaining effect. I won't give away the spoiler. It is quite an interesting film, but it doesn't shy away from some genuinely horrible moments and some heroic moments from bad characters and some bad moments from heroic characters. But it is very much an alternative version of World War II. Whereas here, this is the character that is disguised, that the Tesselector people take it upon themselves to disguise themselves as, but rather than just have him disintegrated, he's transported into here, which is useful for the story later on because we need these antibodies later on. But it allows us to have a moment of saying, yeah, but this guy was a Nazi. I mean, the background to this caper has some of the architects of the situation we find ourselves in, were the worst people imaginable, and we have and followed an ideology that was disgusting. And even if we're only having a quick adventure, we will say our piece about those people, and we will do what the Tesselector does, which is sort of deliver judgment, if you like. And this is another great Moffat sci-fi idea. And unfortunately, there is something that Mitchell and Webb sketch is brilliant, isn't it, about how sort of cool sort of they feel in their big leather-booted Nazi costumes. And there is something, as Cursor Fenric showed with Commander Millington trying to think like the Germans, so he had swastikas in his office. There is something about the imagery that is sort of cinematic. That's partially because so many of the films that I grew up watching were from World War II. There were so many World War II films it's almost as much about, this is steeped as much in the sort of in war filmery than it is in history, actually. And I know that can be uneasy, but I think this is fine. I think this is fine because it sets out its stall, and indeed, its title is kind of saying, I mean, its title works so well, I think, that because it addresses the age-old thing of, well, if you were traveling through time, would you kill Hitler? There's a Stephen Fry book that addresses that, and actually they do, and somebody else rises up and takes his place. But that's an interesting philosophical idea, isn't it? If you could travel back into, obviously I'm a Doctor Who fan, so I wouldn't do anything like as important as that. I'd go and record Fury from the Deep. But the idea that again, he is such a that visual of the short man with the stupid moustache being the worst human, one of the worst human beings in history, is sort of mined for goofball comic effect, and it works for me. I think it works fine. And of course, Albert Welling playing Hitler, he was on the cover of Doctor Who magazine. There were lots of headlines about saying, this is the actor that's going to be playing Hitler in Doctor Who. And actually, it's certainly not the biggest part in the episode. Which is why I go, I'm surprised they didn't get a really famous actor. Albert Welling is an excellent actor. I think he's an alumnus of Manchester University, whence I come. And I love the fact that Rory gets to punch Hitler. I love the fact that the Doctor, even though this is a goofball, screwball sort of comedy, that the Doctor shows his absolute distaste for Hitler. I love the fact that they refer to him as Hitler. It kind of, and it's what, it's another noble human tradition, is we take the most terrible things and we laugh at them. And that is, in the end, how we win. Bad people do cruel, nasty things. Good people try and be good, and they try and take the sting out of nastiness by laughing at it. And that's not to undermine it. That's not to be glib about it. But to mock terrible things is to take the sting from them. And this you're not expecting a call, because you have all this sort of funny Hitler stuff. Mel's, who's been set up as the sort of main character of this episode, is suddenly, here she is, mortally wounded. And I haven't even talked about the Tesselector, which is a fascinating idea. This idea of these little sort of borrowers inside, and I know they're not really little in real life, but they're inside an avatar that goes this. I think it's a fascinating idea. Traveling around and grabbing people the moment before they die in order to punish them. That speaks to a lot of how we behave as human beings, and it feels like it's a sort of just thing to do, but it's not, because it's sort of based on revenge, and it speaks to me about today's society, actually, where a lot of people seem to want to sort of cast judgment on people, but enact that judgment themselves, and I am always slightly dubious about such people. But anyway, here we have a twist that I don't know about you, but I did not see coming. That she's River Song, but also River Song as a timer. And again, I was slightly worried when this happened, because I didn't want there to be another Time Lord around, because I worry that the new series sometimes takes away from the uniqueness of the Doctor. And I know that the old series had loads and loads of Time Lords in it, but hardly any of the Time Lords weren't really like the Doctor. So yeah, they could regenerate, but he was just the Castellan, or he was just the Cardinal or whatever. So they weren't a threat to the Doctor's uniqueness. And then the Master and the Rani were baddies, so they weren't either. But another sort of cool, funny person, with the power to regenerate, suddenly introduces a new character into the mix. So that you could sort of say, well, is interchangeable with the Doctor if we're not careful. Now, of course, the episode sorts that out, because the conclusion of the episode is that River gives up her right to regenerate and reverts to being the one life River Song. But we don't know that at this point. But again, that's very good plotting, because it threatens to take the show in one direction, but actually neatly resolves itself by the end in a way that is dramatic and touching. Now, Alex Kingston's performance is interesting in this, isn't it? Because she's playing sort of slightly younger and less sort of cool, if you like, because River Song is quite cool. I'm not sure I like it as and it's a deliberate choice and a right choice, because she wouldn't have emerged as fully formed River Song that we know and love. So she's playing, the start point of the character we've come to know and love. She's a newborn River Song. She's Inlet Song. So this is like her origin story. And there we go. There's some sort of Stephen Moffat. I wonder how the actors feel about it. They can't object. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're an actor and if you don't want to do a thing, you can say, I'm not doing that joke about my arse or whatever. But I don't know how I feel about the sort of naughty, sexy jokes that Stephen Moffat puts in Doctor Who. He's very good at them. He's a very, very good joke writer, and he's very good at funny lines. But I mean, as sexy as my Doctor Who goes is when it's again very Tarantino again, sort of gun-toting, wisecracking female character. Although there aren't a lot of... no, there are in later... I'm thinking there's none in Reservoir Dogs. But yes, and here we have a bit of Moffat-y, timey-wimey stuff. But at least nobody's sort of travelled back in time to change things. This is more, the Doctor changed it in real time, which is rather fun and rather playful. But he likes this sort of thing where we see something and we assume we know what the end game is going to be because we've seen it with our own eyes. But then we get a the blanks are filled in, which means that the Doctor is one step ahead. And I love the Doctor being one step ahead. The Doctor should be one step ahead. I also quite like the joke of people producing a banana that they think is a gun. I mean, it's daft, but we've had it before in Empty Child Doctor Dances, and it's great. And a word, by the way, for Matt Smith, who I think is absolutely fantastic. He treads the line between... being the frivolous sort of ingenue to a wise and slightly insolent, seen-it-all veteran Time Lord. and we have all of these lovely close-ups as well. I think Richard Senior shoots this really nicely. I think his picture composition's great. And that's obviously, I'm assuming that's a bit of blue screen with the picture filled in outside, but that's again, it gives it a sort of sense of scale. I lost track of something that I was saying earlier on about. Oh yes, and of course she's poisoned him, hasn't she? She's poisoned him, and she has, as far as she's concerned, she's doing the right thing. And of course, that kiss looked just like another sort of Moffat doing I'm going to tease the fans a bit because the fans don't like Doctor Who kissing people, but it's just a peck, so we've got away with that kiss. And you're thinking all of that going, is that him trying to have a kiss in Doctor Who, or is that him? But actually, it's an important part of the plot that is all part of that scene of I'm one step ahead of you, you're one step ahead of me. So it's brilliantly, intricately done. He's such a superb sort of plotter and planner, and a pesky one. Oh yes, what I was going to say about sexy jokes in Doctor Who, as sexy as I like Doctor Who, is the bit in The Androids of Tara where Peter Jeffrey says of Madame Lamia, just because I once showed her a certain courtesy. And I think that's as distinct a reference to anything sexy that you need in Doctor Who, and everything else is in the wrong program. but I'm aware that that is not a definitive point of view, but it is mine own. And it's I just think, and this is me, this is me imposing a motive upon somebody based on absolutely nothing at all. But I feel because Moffat is one of us, some of the things that he does with the show are sometimes a bit, the uncool kid at school going, I'm going to throw in sexy jokes, I'm going to throw in this and that and the other, to show that actually I am cool and know how girls work and do all that sort of thing. And it's sort of revenge upon the people that when we were younger thought Doctor Who was square, and everyone that liked Doctor Who was an unsophisticated virgin. But I have no idea if Stephen Moffat thinks in that way at all. What I'm doing is, if I'd put these things in a Doctor Who, that would be my motive. And he's far smarter and cleverer than I am. So it might just be that he thinks it's funny and he likes that stuff in the show, and because he's a funny scriptwriter who likes doing that stuff. But I do like that sort of way of getting over sort of implausibilities. Saying, does Rory know how to ride a motorcycle? Yeah, it's that sort of day, which I like. It's a great way of keeping the peppiness to it, and riding roughshod over stuff in a way that makes you forgive it, because you go, well, I do just want to get on with the adventure, and I want him to chase on a motorcycle, and how hard can it be? Richard Delane, I think, is very good, actually, as the captain of the Tesseract people. Oh, and here we just get a little bit of stuff tying it in with the past of the show. So I wonder if Billy Piper gets royalties from that. You would have done back in the day, but I suspect now that but that's obviously a publicity shot of Martha Jones. In the way that when Billy Piper appears, you're not quite sure if it's a publicity shot or not. But I think the ones of Martha and Donna are they're a bit like the photos that the Colour Machine produces in The Mind of Evil. But now we have your actual Amelia Pond, because you can get Caitlin Blackwood back, who's great, and she's fantastic in her little duffel coat with the little peg buttons. And I love the sort of fairy tale music. And that we're so tied back with childhood and with Amy's childhood. I do like this element of the Amy Pond story that. And I'm sure we'll talk about. Oh, I've done the 11th Hour already, but I like the fact that young Amy keeps sort of coming back, even if just representing something else, because I think I like the way that Stephen Moffat always ties Doctor Who back to our childhoods in a way that the show didn't so much back in the day. But for nerks like me, who now I'm 50, has to feel something that hooks me into or justifies my continued love and loyalty and rewatching of a science fiction show that is designed to be suitable for children. This gives it a kind of nostalgic hook, and the music helps here too. Murray Gold's music is very, evocative of sort of lonely childhoods and all of that. And Caitlin Blackwood's really good here because she's not playing Amy Pond. She's sort of, her eyes are dead, and it's a sort of not quite a grotesque, but it's a sort of parody of the lovely, fun young child that she was, because she's an emotionless avatar, and I think she does that rather well, and it's slightly disconcerting. Matt Smith's got such a good face, and he is an inspired choice of Doctor. I think he's my favourite. I think of the post 2005 Doctors. He's to me the most sort of Doctorish, even though he's too young. But he's not, because he has an aged wisdom about him that he conveys so brilliantly. So I'm a huge fan of what Matt Smith does. I know people who I like and respect very much find he gets a bit lazy as he goes on, and in fact I've spoken to somebody who worked on the show at that period who felt that by the end he didn't want to be there, and it sort of showed. So I will be interested when I revisit those areas, that time period of the show, if that is indeed reflected. I think that's a fantastic joke. What's a clue to River Song's presence? Loads of undressed people running out of a big building, and again her holding two machine guns as she breaks into a big fancy party in Nazi Germany, again just feels to me very Quentin Tarantino. This is the closest I think that Doctor Who's got to being Quentin Tarantino-y. Now, it may just be that's because Inglourious Basterds is set during World War II as well, but as I say, I do think it has that kind of slightly rock and roll violence vibe about it, which I don't mind because it's fiction. I don't like anything that sort of glibly glorifies violence, but I think, the thing about Tarantino is he always shows the pretty grim side of it, even if it's sometimes sort of operatically over the top. Thinking about Django Unchained, where you shoot somebody and their head explodes or whatever, but that's so ludicrous. But he's also not afraid of giving his characters nobility and showing pain and suffering, and he is sort of he's like a sort of complex comic strip, Quentin Tarantino, and I quite enjoy that. I as I say, I don't think everything has to be navel gazing or po-faced or serious. And what is it John Pertwee says, are you serious about what I do, not necessarily about how I do it, and I think Doctor Who adventures have a dramatic right to have a dramatic license to be to embrace the lunatic or to poke fun at things, even very, very serious things, because it's contained within an adventure that has a great spirit and a great positivity about it. And this actor here has he's been a contestant on Strictly Come Dancing, because he ended up being in EastEnders. So he's an actor there with a bright future ahead of him, one where he becomes very well known to the British public, but not so well known to me that he's called Davood, I think. I can't remember his full name. But if he was an extra in a 1960s story, I'd be able to tell you everything about him. But I leave this work for the people who should come after me. And of course, I don't feel that. Oh, that was a brilliant shot. The the mirror there thing that Amy did. This is very Doctor Who, isn't it? The Doctor coming out in a top hat. Oh, Doctor Who. He likes doing that, doesn't he? He likes doing that sort of thing. And so here we have the sort of explanation for the Tesselector, which is a great idea, which will, of course, enable the story arc to cheat its way out of the conundrum it has set up. Everything's a Sonic. That's the other thing. Again, I do think you slightly destroy the uniqueness of the Sonic screwdriver if you have everything Sonic. But then again, I think the Sonic sunglasses are quite funny. So I'm in two minds about a lot of this stuff. And that's where guilty pleasure comes into it. Is it should anything be a guilty pleasure? Because what you say when you say guilty pleasure is, I like that thing, but I worry what people might think of me, or what even I might think of myself for liking that thing, because it's a thing that's either that's bad for me or that's made of not very good things. I like it, but it's not very good. And then you go, well, it must be good if you like it. Or you're going, oh, no, I only... did you go, I have bad taste? No, I've got good taste. But I also sometimes like things that are bad. But, I like a Kraft cheese slice, even though I know it's not very good food or indeed very good cheese. But sometimes that with a slice of Warburton's white toast and thick pretend butter really hits the spot. Although I, prefer and like proper food. So, yeah, guilty pleasure is an interesting one, isn't it? And it's not one I'm entirely resolved with. I think we should sometimes be able to just say, I like that. But I suppose it's a way of framing different kind of likes. There are some things I like because I think they're exceptionally... but I also wonder if there are some things that I sort of like because they're hot, because I should like them. A sort of very arty film that's actually takes some getting through. But, I know it's brilliantly shot and it's very clever and it's very worthy. That's not a guilty pleasure. That's like the bran flakes of the film world, isn't it? It's quite hard to eat. And you sort of, the more you do it, you sort of get used to it, and you can feel the good that it's doing you. In the case of bran flakes coursing through your body, in the case of a clever book or a very arty film, because of what it does to your brain power and your synapses. But would you say you actually enjoy it as much as you enjoy a cream cake or a peppy, funny action film that is perhaps a bit naughty? It's complex, isn't it? Which is why we must always be very wary of saying, what is good and what is objectively good and what is objectively bad. Even though I would be confident in saying when I think something's well directed and when I think something's badly directed. But can you have a badly directed program that you enjoy? I think you can, sometimes in spite of, sometimes because of. But I like this. There's so much to this adventure, isn't there? But it's not. It's not the sort of story you expect. I'm surprised at how early Nina Toussaint White is not in it anymore, because I sort of consider her to be the main guest actor in this story, and she's been gone for ages, and there's still a good 10-15 minutes to go. But yeah, I think this is why I don't think of it as a story so much, because we've got the question in the universe hidden in plain sight, which has been set up, and we've with all of this is part of the story arc. The Tesselector, of course, think the Doctor can't die now because they've seen him, and it was definitely him die on the beach. And God, I remember at the beginning of this season, of course, it was, which one of these characters is going to die. That's an excellent effect, and that's a really compelling idea. Give somebody that is responsible for terrible things hell. Who dispenses justice. But the special effect takes it very literally. She looks like she's burning in the internal fires of hell. That's a really fantastic visual effect, I think. Amy is being very, very clever here. Outwits the crew of the Tesselector. I've got to start thinking of my favourite things. But it's great because this is, again, cleverly thought out, because we've set up the antibodies, we've set up the things on the wrists. In fact, we've had it done twice because Ella Kennian's character had to do it first, and then it was done to them when they were both given the wrist things to make them safe from the antibodies. So we've had those set up twice. They're Chekhov's wrist gauntlets, and now they do talk a lot before they kill you. They suffer from Daleks in Remembrance of the Daleks syndrome, where they spend a very long time telling you what they're going to do. In fact, so long it gives you time to escape. But and I would say that is a little bit. It is. You are kind of going, oh, there's. And I think the Doctor takes a long time to die as well. There's no threat and death is quite as imminent as perhaps it needs to be for something that's truly going to be exciting. I feel as I watch this that perhaps everybody should be dead now if this was a really plausible threat. But obviously we can't have it that Amy and Rory cause the deaths of these people. And it is, it is a nice piece of Jeopardy provision that, Amy and Rory do this in order to stop River being burnt up and to make the Tesselector people vanish. But to do that, they end up stuck in the inside at the mercy of the things. But again, I feel that they should be dead by now. That thing was charging up and they should be dead. And obviously we need to feel the Doctor's suffering because that's got to be dramatic. But I feel while all this is going on, they should have been killed 10 times over, and we're going to cut back to them, and they'll have escaped from that one that was with them when we charging up when we left them. What seems like now 35 minutes ago, So although it's, I think, artfully placed and set up. I think you're yelling at the screen a little bit. I think that is a bit that doesn't quite work for me. That for all this modern Who big talky stuff that you need. There's a bit in the Space Museum when is it Ian and Vicky and Barbara have this really long conversation while the guard's just standing out of shot, and then 10 minutes later he goes, all right, stop talking. It's like, oh god, yeah, he's been there all the time. Why has he just been letting them have this long chat? And this is a bit like that, even though that's a lovely shot. I do think the photography on this is very good. Go on, tell them the death will be implemented. Keep chatting away. I think that took far too long myself. Even though they're a nice visual, and again, sort of cleansing antibody bots is not an unusual thing for Moffat era Who, but I don't mind that. I think it's a nice recurring kind of motif. It speaks to sort of logically speaks to me. And here, yes, well, and here we are. We're now tying up. I mean, this is a funny one as well, isn't it? That River Song is their daughter. I don't think we ever quite have the emotional repercussions of that either. But it's a bold thing to try and do. I think I think Stephen Moffat tries to do interesting thing with time travel, and he's drawn to sort of complex stories that pay off and intertwine and surprise, and he's very good at unleashing surprises. But I think because of that, it sometimes and it's not an I'm not but that doesn't mean it is a emotionally free. He's not a cold sort of jigsaw puzzle manufacturer, because there's plenty of emotional content to the Moffat stuff. But I think some of the longer term stuff, like Amy and Rory and River, it doesn't. From here on in, I don't really ever believe that she's their daughter, and if you've got kids, even though she's older than they are, it shouldn't really matter in that sense. There should, I think the complex time travel-y, wisecrackery stuff overtakes the fact that, hang on, this was, when you've had a baby, when you've given birth, even more so for Amy than for the woman than for the man. But if you've born a child and she's there, even if she looks like Dr. Alex Kingston from ER and not the baby, that you've missed out on that childhood. There's all sorts of stuff there that I never think quite reverberates as well as it should. I think Karen Gillan looks absolutely fantastic on camera, and knows how to do suppressed emotion. Alex Kingston too, and this is a nice contrast to her performance as in the early stages of River Song that we saw 25 minutes ago, and so it all sort of coalesces here, and this is good emotional content. And it provides us with the get out that we need, because we don't want the Doctor to die, and we also don't want River Song. We don't suddenly want the possibility that that Alex Kingston's gonna regenerate into Phoebe Waller-Bridge or whoever, so that River Song goes on forever and ever, or can be brought back, in the wrong hands by the wrong people or whatever. So you need to get rid of the fact that she can regenerate. Although, it's quite a shift in the course of this sort of fun and frivolous adventure, that she's gone from the person that wants to kill the Doctor to the person that's prepared to sacrifice her regenerative capabilities. But that's a wonderful shot. That's a really nice shot. But all of this stuff has been baked into the storytelling. He's planted the seeds to make all of this absolutely possible, and it's all stuff that has been made possible in the series before. The idea that regeneration energy hangs around, it can be passed on to people, and blah, blah, blah. So this, science-wise, if you like, even though it's not scientific, this seems to me to be a perfectly acceptable flourish at the end of the episode in order to, restore order, if you like, the natural order of things. So yeah, I think that's fine. It makes sense because it's sort of beautifully placed, if you like. Yeah, and you used all your regenerations. We don't need to know how or why. We don't need to know the science. It's just, but you're a normal person. The Doctor's the one that regenerates, and that's to me as it should be. It's quite an uneven episode, isn't it? It's a mystery with flashback. Then it's a sort of World War II pantomime World War II caper. Plus, whatever the Tesselector stuff is, and the talky emotional content as well. And this is where she gets the diary, which she had when we first saw her meet Doctor Who, in a story that I was convinced was going to be her one and only appearance, because her whole story was told in Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead. But I'm sure I will go into detail on that, of how dismissive I was of my friend who said, so we're going to see her loads then? I was like, no, she's a one-off character. Little did I know. And so here we have to be reminded of the story arc in this particular season of Doctor Who. So maybe that's why I don't think of it as a sort of story in its own right either, because it's picking up where we left off from A Good Man Goes to War, and it's putting things in place for the resolution of the season story arc. So the story itself is kind of, well, the story itself is River Song, who is not a character confined to this episode. So that's why it feels like a sort of a passageway of an episode rather than, in Cluedo, the murder happens in the ballroom or the library or the lounge or whatever. Not, whereas this feels like it's the passageway, the corridor on the way to the room, the rooms where it happens. And here's this actor is he's the High Septon in Game of Thrones. So. He's had some nice stuff to do. Does he only have one line in this? Yeah, he does. He only has one line in this, but I got a good costume, some nice sideburns. I love this Doctor theme, by the way. And it was Ashley actually that told me, and I actually tried to. He told me what it was that was clever about this piece of music, and I put it in my review of this season, one of the seasons in Doctor Who magazine, because it was the menu music as well. So I thought, well, I'll say what I like about that I Am the Doctor theme, and it's this, and they cut that bit out. So whether they didn't believe me, or whether I didn't phrase it right, or whether it was irrelevant, because actually I was talking about it in terms of it being part of the DVD packaging, the menu as a whole. Whatever. Either way, they got rid of it, and now I can't even remember what it was. But Ashley is your man. Ashley will be able to tell you all of the beautiful stuff about how the themes work in Doctor Who, how the incidental music works, and all of that, because he's a proper skilled musician. And he, as I say, he did tell me when I told him why I liked that I Am the Doctor theme so much. One of the reasons that it really works, it's something about the tempo, but I don't know. So anyway, I've got to choose five things that I like about Let's Kill Hitler. So okay, I like the clues joke. I like the where can we look for clues for River Song, and all the people run out screaming. I think that's very funny. I think calling Hitler Hitler and putting him in a cupboard, and actually the whole wheeze of setting up an episode to be about this terrible figure, and actually then treating him as a sort of inconsequential side issue, I think is funny, and I think is dealt with, in a way that means you get in a manner that means I think it would be churlish to take any even a scintilla of offence at it, even though invoking such a terrible time period for comic effect can be a difficult thing, but I don't think they do anything wrong there. I think I've got to choose Mel's, because I think she's an intriguing mystery, and a bit like when Dawn came into Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you're sort of going, well, I don't want this to change what I know about this, and I know that you haven't just ignored the fact that we should have heard of her by now and haven't, so what the hell are you doing? I think she works the way that she's sort of brought in, and it's sort of wittily done, and Nina Toussaint-White is fantastic and sparky and spunky and funny, and I do love that opening of pointing the gun and saying, what the hell, let's kill Hitler. That to me is an adventure going, yeah, let's go. I think that's fun, and I think that's cheeky, and that's naughty, and of course and I do think I do like the title, but but she does that. I've already chosen Hitler, so I can't choose the title as well, can I? Can I choose the title? But then it's all about Hitler. Then I'm all about Hitler. But what else? It is a good title, though, isn't it? No, actually, I'm going to go for a visual. I think Richard Senior's visuals are all very good. I do think it's beautifully photographed, and I'm going to choose one particular moment. I like the bit where Mel's throws the TARDIS model and it becomes your actual TARDIS. That's one of many visual flourishes, but I think that's a particularly good one. And then I think I like the idea of the Tesselector because I think it's a complicated idea, that thing about justice and dispensing justice, and we know with hindsight that it comes back as well and comes in useful. But I think that's another of Stephen Moffat's really brilliant science fiction ideas, but that is also tied up with morality, and you're in two minds about them really. Are they goodies? Are they baddies? And in a way, they sort of serve the purpose of being both, and indeed. They come to the Doctor's aid at the end of the season. But also what they do is morally complex and interesting, but all based on a fantastic, very science fiction idea and one that speaks about justice and retribution, which I think is a thing that is complexly deployed in this day and age and within our own often conflicted morality. So the Tesselector as an idea, I think, is another fiendishly clever idea of Stephen Moffat's that he weaves into the story and indeed into the arc very cleverly. So those are my 5 things. What was it? The joke, the clues joke, Hitler, Nina Toussaint White as Mel's, the visual of the TARDIS model turning into the TARDIS, and the idea of the Tesselector. They are my favourite things. What are Ashley's? Here is his number 1.
Favourite thing number 1, the cornfield. Rory and Amy are making a crop circle at the start of the episode, which involves the camera kind of pulling back to reveal that it says the word doctor, which of course Mel then zooms through in her red car. I think that's a really iconic moment in the episode, and it reminded me of the scene from the X-Files episode of The Simpsons, where Homer, while running away from the spooky alien, shouts "Yeah!" and then draws the word in the cornfield along the way. Really very memorable scene and great fun to see us again.
That is a very good Simpsons joke, isn't it? And it's funny because I said the cornfield reminded me of the X-Files. Maybe it does remind me of the X-Files episode of the Simpsons rather than the X-Files. But it ties in with that sort of thing that the X-Files did, which is it ties in the things of sort of ufology and the unexplained things that are often cited in real life in inverted commas, sort of alien hunting, and the X-Files always seemed to very boldly claim all of that stuff. And so when Doctor Who invokes the X-Files, it does feel like it's playing with the big boys now, even if it's once removed in a sense, because the cornfields didn't originate with the X-Files, but the fact that the X-Files did that sort of thing within its science fiction, it dared to say, well, this stuff, those photos that everyone says are fakes, or those the mad people who claim to have been abducted, well, what if they were actually true? And that's what made the X-Files seem so special. And because the X-Files was for years the acceptable face of science fiction, for Doctor Who to invoke the X-Files always seems to me to be something that I find appealing and attractive. And I think maybe just because it was so long ago, I could easily have chosen the cornfield, because I think it's a great way to open a season, and I think it's a really funny joke, and they top the joke because they've written Doctor, which I think is very funny. They top the joke with having Mel's put the line through the Doctor but they haven't seen that because that hasn't happened yet. So that's a sort of very Moffat-y way of doing it. So yeah, it is a great opening, and the cornfield is the icing on the cake, especially as Amy and Rory are doing it in a mini as well. So yeah, I could see why you chose that, Ashley. I didn't. Not a good start from me, unlike the episode, which was a very good start.
Thing number 2 is not the penny in the air motif, but comes very close to that scene where Mel is lying on Amy's bed, and that Amy and Rory are starting to realise their kind of origin story as a couple. And just as the scene ends, Mel throws the little model of the TARDIS that she's been playing with into the air, and as it gets into the air, it becomes the actual TARDIS spinning off into the present day action of the episode. I could watch that I could watch that moment over and over again because it's so seamless and so dynamic, and it's just a brilliant, brilliant and exciting way back into the story from the flashback.
Oh, well, suddenly redemption throws its way into view, hurls its way into view, and spins up into the sky. So I chose that as well, and it's a beautiful little moment, but it's absolutely beautiful. And I'd forgotten it, actually. I only noticed it this time around. I must have noticed it at the time, but I mean, as I say, I haven't watched this episode for a long time. Oh, before the pandemic, I should think. So it may have been the last time I saw Ashley. But yes, so we're now 1-1 as we move on to thing number 3.
Thing number 3 is Rory, who is hilarious in this episode. I think in the previous season, he hadn't necessarily always had that much to do, lots of kind of moping around. But in this episode, his character has become so much stronger and has so many brilliant lines. There's a line about him feeling like there's a banging in his head, though it might be Hitler in the cupboard. There's a line where he steals the motorbike from the German guard, having given him a feint with the Heil thing, and then it punches him in the face. And Amy says to him, "Can you ride this thing?" And he goes, "I expect so. It's that sort of day." Those are absolute zinging lines. It really gives Rory some depth that he'd kind of been missing before. So, Rory, number 3.
I do like that motorbike line, even though it's very, very naughty and it shouldn't be allowed. It's just done so well. It's just got such cheeky chutzpah that I love it, and because it means that the story doesn't get held up. So you sort of go, "No, I'm taking you." I'm in danger with Rory because I loved Rory from the very beginning, and I know a lot of fandom didn't, but I always knew he would come good because I thought Arthur Darvill was always excellent, and sometimes better than the material that he was given, or something, because Rory was designed to be a bit annoying and a bit hopeless sometimes, and sometimes people, I think, mistake that for the actor being that when the actor's not, and being an actor doing that, it's not very rewarding. But his comic timing was always bang on, and he's equally good at the dramatic stuff, and it's never fun playing the sort of klutz, which he had to do quite a lot in especially in his first season. But I always thought he was great, and I did hope he'd become a regular, and I was delighted when I saw his name in the opening titles, when it was first in the opening titles. And so Rory, I'm probably in danger with never nominating, because I just take for granted that he'll always be one of my favourite things about the episodes because he's so good. So I'm happy to lose a point for somebody who I think delivers consistently. And he's, funny enough, he's from Hannah, who does the door at XS Malarkey, and who I've known for years and years and years. Lovely Hannah is a childhood friend of his, so that's why I got the Who's Round with him. But I've bumped into him so many times in non-Doctor Who circumstances. But anyway, he's a lovely guy, and I'm so glad that Doctor Who is a springboard to so many other things for him, because I think he's really talented, but wears it lightly, and he's good people, as they say. What's thing number 4, Ashley?
Thing number 4, Matt Smith as the fatally wounded Doctor. The way that he portrays the bravery and the wittiness and the depth of that feeling, the way that he interacts with the voice interface of the TARDIS to find some comfort and yet bickers with the thing. But most importantly, those scenes where he's in top hat and tails, kind of flailing around the set like he's some sort of puppet having lost control, and yet doing so with such grace, like it's a scene from a musical. It's just amazing, and it is one of those scenes that those images that immediately jumps into your head when you think of the episode.
Yeah, it is a great visual. I think that was tainted for me because I just find it goes on too long, the Doctor dying thing, even though that's the sort of point of the episode. And the bit where he's on the floor looking at the publicity photos of his past companions is lovely. And yeah, that interaction with the sort of dead-eyed Amelia Pond is great. And he's doing it all pretty much on his own, and he's excellent. And yeah, his physicality as an actor, I think, is fantastic. He is a bit like his body's been activated by the magician's apprentice, and his bones are sort of dancing to that piece of music, flailing about, and yet of course, flailing about with the actor in absolute control of that flailing, so that he knows, how to make it work, and so that, it's ungainly, but it's controlled, and it's an ungainliness that is comfortable to watch, which is not as easy as I think it. Flailing can look just undignified and a bit crap. So to make it look undignified and yet be properly controlled and choreographed is like a good fight, is like a good action scene, is actually harder to do than you would think, and he does that all on his own. I think Matt Smith's physical acting is a great strength of his truly wonderful Doctor. But I didn't choose that either, so I'm not going to win this one. Do I get a consolation prize for at least being 3-2, which I think is an honourable loss, or am I going to lose 4-1? I actually think even having one is pretty good, but I'm not going to lie. I'm hoping to get 2.
My final thing about this episode is the redeeming quality of those rather odd-looking octopusy antibody things that patrol the corridors of the Tesselector. Whilst they are a bit rubbish as practical effects within the episode, they do have a very good line in reassuring threats. Lines such as, "Remain calm while your life is extracted," or my personal favourite, "You will experience a tingling sensation and then death." I think if I was going to be murdered by a crazy octopusy squid thing made out of IKEA curtain rings or something, I too would like a reassuring tagline as the end comes close.
Well, this is where I come from a completely different perspective to Ashley, because I actually think they're a great visual. I think we're conditioned to say Doctor Who practical effects are naff looking when they're not, because that's what we've had drilled into us since the year dot, and I would happily, out and proud, say that's a really good special effect. They are a really good visual, and they float very convincingly, which is quite hard to do, and they merge with the technology around them, and they're a palpable physical threat and a pleasing visual, sort of, octopusy. Like they tie in with being sort of, sort of biological antibodies, which they're not, but they look like, they have a biological silhouette in that they're sort of tentacly octopusy, but also being, robotic, sort of bacteria erasers, if you like. So I think it's a well thought out and a well realized visual and creation and design. And maybe I'm just humorless, and I because the joke, which is, and it is a very, it is a nice joke of sort of going, how would an emotionless robotic antibody cleaner try to, efficiently clear up its, flailing, emotionally wrought, trying to escape targets. It would be, well, try and reassure them in order to facilitate, the cleanest possible destruction. Well, you would issue reassuring things like that, but in robot form, so that becomes sort of a amusing and Doctor Who juxtaposition of the terrifying and the mundane, and the the very British thing of it sort of being bureaucratic speak, but that's trying to sound concern, but is of course scary because it's false concern. It's robotically issued concern. So the reassurance comes from a robot. So there's a dissonance there. So that I absolutely buy all of that, but for me, I'm going, you should have killed them by now. You should have killed them by now. You should have killed them by now. So I all of that, brilliant conception and how cleverly wrought it all is done for by that aspect, that for me. So that's why I didn't choose that. But interesting that we had different appreciations and reservations about the very same element. I like Ashley. He's a good egg. A man of great sort of gentle energy, and his comedy is benign and cheery, and he's a very, very talented musician and a very nice man. Let us see from his outro if he's going to plug anything or tell you anything more about himself.
So thank you, Toby, for having me on your podcast, and if any of your listeners or viewers would like to follow me, ideally on social media, because in person it's not going to get either of us very far. Then I am Ashley Frieze. I'm on Twitter with @AshleyJokes. I'm on Instagram and Facebook with Ashley Frieze Comedian. I'm on TikTok, not doing dances, you'll be pleased to hear. And I have a YouTube channel. Just search Ashley Frieze on YouTube. Please do subscribe if you like comedy songs. And of course, I'll be appearing at a comedy club near you if I can convince them to let me.
Well, I hope to work with Ashley again soon. It's been too long. That is a reminder. And I think of Ashley as being one of the people who's contributed most recently to Happy Times and Places, because, as you know, a lot of these are in the archive. I'm now going to look at what year he sent this. This was 24th of August 2022. Oh, so it's only 2 years ago. So yeah, that is more recent than some people who's been in the archive since. I knew I'd asked him relatively recently because we hadn't really been in touch, and I think I'd put something about Doctor Who on social media, or he'd put something. I'd gone, of course, Ashley. So I asked him, and Let's Kill Hitler was one of those still left over. And I'm trying to up the new Who's that I'm doing, the ones I'm unfamiliar with, to see if I can just balance it out a bit. And so I hope my slightly less informed and more instantaneous almost reactions to some of these more modern episodes, so modern they're 13 years old, are entertaining in a way that perhaps my other podcasts aren't, but still worth your time. And if they're not worth your time, Ashley's comedy output definitely is. So scurry off and check those, and I will speak to you on another occasion. But until next time, thanks for listening, and cheerio. Thanks ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydoke, and my special guest this episode was Ashley Frieze, who you can find on Twitter @AshleyJokes, but go back and re-listen to his outro for all the other places you can find him on social media. I'm indebted to Ashley and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Sydney Wilson, David James Wilson, Andrew Willis, Rhys Williams, Michael Williams, Tom White, Stephen White, Adam Westwood, Gary Wales, Apollo C. Vermouth, Sabrina Tirabassi, Damien Timmer, Nick Temple, Neil Tate, Stephen, David Shepherdson, Graham Slate, Keith Say, James Silk, Julian Botting, Michael, Stephen Moffat, not that one, Ashley Knight, Susie Ferguson, Matt Foy, Alan W. Wright, Matthew Tate, Richard Riley, and Paul Kirkley. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to join that illustrious roll call, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Toby Haydoke, where for as little as £3 a month, you can get advance releases, bonus releases, your very own podcast, far too much information, behind-the-scenes looks at some of the documentaries and various other Doctor Who-related things that I get up to, and monthly AMAs, which are also exclusive to patrons. You can become a patron for free. You don't get much for that at the moment, but it gives you a sneak peek at what's going on there, and I'm working out how best to work that into the system. They keep changing it and offering new things, so it's worth hanging around there, because I'm probably going to try, as I say, I'm going to try and come up with some interesting ways to keep you involved and in my clutches. If you don't want to be in my clutches but occasionally want to brush past me coyly, you can do so by buying me a coffee, which you can do at Ko-fi, Ko-fi, Ko-fi.com/Toby Haydoke, which involves no monthly commitments, but also no bonuses, but just the joy of supporting an artiste of your approval. But there's a way you can support without any financial output at all, and I totally understand and respect that. I'm very grateful to you just for listening. But if you wanted to do a little bit more, you could go to iTunes, Apple, Podbean, Spotify, even YouTube now, where these appear as videos without actually any video, and like, subscribe, thumbs up, and give a few lines of review saying what you like about these, and a 5-star rating. That all helps and is gratefully received. Like Ashley, I'm all over social media. I'm at Toby Haydoke on Twitter. I'm also at Haydoke Podcasts, which is just content related to these podcasts. And I am on Facebook. I have a Facebook page where you can keep up to date with my work and things like that. And I'm on Instagram at toby.haydoke, and I have a website, www.tobyhaydoke.com. And every Tuesday I am in Manchester at Excess Malarkey Comedy Club, and I have a monthly new material night in Manchester as well called Testing. So if you want to come and see me in the flesh, I put on lovely shows and charge as little as possible for them. It's sort of what I do everywhere, really. I don't have the confidence to charge too much for anything that I do, so you won't be ripped off. But I do work very hard to make everything I do, I hope, as good as it possibly can be. And I have excellent comedians come and play the nights with me. So even if what I do is god awful, those I bring with me are the best comedians or the most exciting new prospects working today. So yeah, it's not just Doctor Who. Come and check out the comedy too. And I will leave it there because that was quite a long episode and I'm tired. So, but a little bit of it, because we always have a little bit of post credits, don't we? My dog Bernard, I hope is a popular part of my Patreon. People like pictures of my dog, and he's a good lad. And I can actually hear him on the sofa now. He's just adjusting himself. He's been sitting on the sofa behind me, away from my little cupboard of dreams, which is where I record all my voiceovers and podcasts and things. But I don't do too tight security for a commentary. I don't mind if there's a dog in the background. But if I was doing the safety voiceover for Albanian Airlines, which I have done, he would be banished and all the doors would be shut and all sorts of things would be going on. But when I say, oh yes, he's a very good boy and he's very lovely and he came for a run with me today. I'm doing Couch to 10k, and I did 10k but didn't run it all. There were intervals, scheduled intervals. But he came with me. He runs behind me on the way up the river, just in my blind spot, so I can't see that he's there. So I have to keep checking. And then when I get to the top and cross and then head towards home, he runs in front of me, so he knows. But we had his friend to visit, Kobani, who's a little rapscallion of a dog who belongs to our friend Mo. He looks like if he could be something that wasn't a dog, he would be the Beano. Kobani, he's got a sort of air of peskiness about him, but a sort of a cheeky messiness. He looks like he's got an underbite, and he's totally black, but obviously his underbite, his teeth are totally white, and he's got a sort of ponytail on his head to keep his hair out of his eyes, and he's little and he scampers about. He's a little minx, but Bernard could not stand the fact that somebody else, some doggy else was in the house, and was a shadow of his former self for 4 days on the trot. Totally back to normal now is Bernard, but he wasn't having it. He just sulked. I don't know why I've told you that. I'm just thinking out loud, really. But yes, if you do like Bernard and you do like the pictures of him on my Patreon or wherever, he's a great lad. But like all of us, he's flawed. He's flawed.